willpower to survive is ingrained in all of us, but some people aren't fortunate enough to survive. There are several cases that have tested people to the extremes, and miraculously they were able to defy the odds and survive. So here is the top 10 amazing people who survived the impossible, part 3. If you guys want part 2, click right over here. Also, there'll be a link in the description below. Starting us off at number 10, like we always do with Richard Moyer. After he let his dog outside, she ran into the woods that surrounded his house, but she quickly returned, running for her life because a gigantic black bear was chasing her. The bear broke down the door to the house and stormed inside, attacking Richard and waking up his wife, who tried to intervene. The bear quickly turned on his wife, and this promoted the dog to leap onto the bear and attack him. Richard then tried to defeat the bear, but he mauled him, chewing off his head for a while and then just stopped. The bear went to the porch and sat down. The damage from the bear's claws was extensive, and he needed 37 staples on his head, but he survived. Now at number 9, we're talking about Michelina Lewandowska. Her fiance and his friend devised a plan to get rid of her because he no longer wanted to be with her anymore. So they attacked her with a stun gun, tied up her wrists and ankles, and stuffed her into a cardboard box and buried her alive under 4 inches of dirt, and they just put a 90-pound tree branch on top of her so she couldn't get out. Incredibly, she was able to use her engagement ring to cut the tape loose and then claw her way outside. She had difficulty walking and breathing for weeks after the attack, but the two men were sentenced to 20 years in prison. Let's just say this woman pretty much woke from the dead. Number 8 brings us to Michael Benson, who spent 2 days inside of a live volcano crater after his helicopter crashed and missed the boiling pool of lava. Rescuers struggled to locate him because of the thick fume cloud. So Michael spent 2 full days inside of the crater. He was able to listen to the sounds of the lava bubbling because he was so close. Luckily, he was able to reach the rescue net that has been dropped to him in the thick fog. Now in at lucky number 7, we have Peter Skalberg. He found himself to be trapped inside of a car that was buried in snow for 60 days. He survived by eating handfuls of snow, and his body resorted to eating his own body fat. Because he was in such low temperatures, his metabolism actually slowed down, and he was able to survive without food for such a long period of time. Eventually, he was rescued by 2 snowmobilers who was absolutely in shock to find this man laying in the backseat of this car. Rodney Fox makes it into number 6. He was spearfishing in the ocean when he was viciously attacked by a great white shark. The shark was able to crush his torso, ribs, and cut the fingers off of his right hand. Rodney Fox was able to escape, but many of his organs were exposed to the outside elements. When rescuers saved him, they kept on his wetsuit so his organs just wouldn't fall out. He is so lucky to survive. Bahia Bakari makes its way into number 5. A Yemeni Flight 626 Airbus crashed into the Indian Ocean on June 30th, 2009. Young Bahia was rejected from the plane, and despite having no life jacket, she was able to stay above the water by clinging onto a piece of debris from the plane. 9 hours after the crash, she could no longer hear screams, so she realized that she was alone. Bahia was the sole survivor of the crash, and she had suffered from a fractured pelvis and a broken collarbone, among other things, and she was released from the hospital just 3 weeks later. Greg Rasmussen comes into this list at number 4. Back in 2003, he was involved in a plane crash which left him severely injured and alone in the African bush. His leg was broken in 6 different places, but he still managed to use his survival skills to his advantage to survive. He had to endure extreme temperatures, and he was exposed to many predators, including lions, while he waited for help. He was eventually rescued, and he almost had to have both of his feet amputated, but doctors were able to save him. He is, however, 3 inches shorter now, but at least he's still alive. Up next, number 3 is Paul Templar. He was a tour guide on an African river when the boat was nearly tipped over by a bull hippo. One of the other tour guides fell into the river, so Paul attempted to save his life. While he was doing so, the bull hippo swallowed his head. Even though Paul initially escaped, the hippo continued to maul his body repeatedly, which left him with broken ribs, a severed arm, and holes in his back and chest. Luckily, he was able to survive this ordeal after having extensive surgery. The Chilean mining accident makes its way into number 2. Back in 2010, 33 men were trapped 700 meters underground after a mine collapsed. Food supplies were severely limited, and each of the men had lost an average of 18 pounds by the time they were rescued. Rescuers were able to send food and other supplies, which allowed these 33 men to survive for 69 days underground until they were able to find a way to rescue them safely. So on October 13, 2010, the men were brought to the surface one at a time in a specifically built capsule, and while this rescue mission was happening, there was 1 billion people watching this event around the world. Coming into number 1, we have Poon Lim. He was able to survive for 4 months adrift at sea on one of the ship's raft after the merchant ship he was on sunk. Luckily for him, he was able to find a few cans of food and water to sustain him for a little while. Luckily, he survived this whole ordeal practically unharmed except for dehydration. Lim came out of this experience with a hatred of raw fish, which he lived on for the past 133 days. Well, there you guys have it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys all in the next one.